Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for our weekly Q&A session with me, Andrew Musgrove, and our Newcastle United editor, Aaron Stokes. We are live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, and later on our podcast channel. If you are listening on the podcast, thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like and follow the podcast and leave us a rating and review if you get the chance. Once again, plenty to talk about when it comes to the world of Newcastle United. If you have got any comments, if you're watching live, pop them into the comment box and we'll get through the best of them. Aaron, we're going to start with transfers. It has gone a little bit quiet, but we were led to believe that would be the case after Bottom came in. But why has it gone so quiet? Is it a case that Newcastle were just expecting this? This is the game they are willing to play. The transfer market is a little bit volatile with price tags and demands from selling clubs, and just a mixture of lots of elements rolling into one that has led us to this kind of quiet patch.
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons. I think one, the summer market's always a tricky one to try and get players over the line. Newcastle going after targets who are essentially playing for Premier League rivals. When you look at Jack Harrison and Anthony Gordon, the likes of Everton and Leeds are desperate to keep hold of them and probably don't want to strengthen Newcastle anymore. They're being charged, they're being asked for very high prices. There's sort of that Newcastle tax that's being added on, for sort of players where they're being charged over the market rate. And I think one is, they're going for a different calibre of player these days. They're going for like Moussa, Diaby, who should be playing at a Champions League club, and they're going for players that they've got to really try and sell, Newcastle on them, because they're essentially even Champions League clubs for mid-table clubs. So I think there's a sort of a number of reasons why we're approaching August and they haven't sort of strengthened an attack.
So fresh that they haven't panicked yet. I think they were well aware of the demands that were going to be given to them, given this so-called Newcastle United tax, given the assumption they have, an open checkbook, which is the case of the budget to work to, and also they have scouted players, so they're going to have an A list, they're going to have a B list, they're going to have a C list. So they're not panicking. I think that is a really good thing, because it would be very easy to do so with the expectation, with the attention. It would be easy to give them these demands as well from selling clubs, from the agents. And I'm very pleased that they've shown this kind of shrewd approach to the transfer market, where they haven't gone down the road of just agreeing to everything, because once you do go down that road, it is very hard to turn around and come back up.
Yeah, we saw it in January with Diego Carlos. I think that was a good deal to walk away from. Obviously, Villa have managed to sign him for about 15 million less than Newcastle are being sort of quoted in January. And I agree. I think if they'd gone in all scattergun approach and just signed players because they needed bodies in, they're going to pay over the odds. I think it leaves them vulnerable down the line to clubs sort of taking the mickey a bit when they're sort of doing deals. So look, there's no secret Eddie Howe is disappointed with not having one or two more over the line. He said as much in Portugal over the weekend. He would have liked to have had maybe two attacking additions in by now, but look, it hasn't happened. And I think these things move very quickly. Darren Eales, for example, came out of the blue. I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on things behind the scenes and another sort of body's brought in the next couple of days, because they're going to have to strengthen for Nottingham Forest, and Howe's made that clear that that's his aim.
Yeah, that Nottingham Forest game on the 6th of August, not too far away. We know that Moussa Diaby was a big target. They really liked him. He's one of the best wingers in Europe. He's got a big future ahead of him. He came out last week and said he's going to stop by Leverkusen. You would imagine the fact that he's got Champions League football probably has something to do with that. But just how big of a blow do you think that is, that once again we're sitting here, we're talking about, like we were with Teke, Newcastle have lost out on one of their main targets. They're not just liked, they're scouted, and if he arrived tomorrow, they didn't know exactly where he would fit into that team.
Yeah, look, it's a blow, because they've spent a lot of time, scouting Diaby. They spent a lot of time trying to get an Ekitike deal over the line. So look, any setbacks, obviously, it's hugely disappointing, but it's good to see that they've had backup options. Diaby's stalled in. We're not sort of flapping around thinking, no one else is in the pipeline. We know that they're trying to push Jack Harrison. We know that obviously they're trying to find someone who can play down the right as well as a striker. So yes, it's a blow, but look, Newcastle have been fortunate in a sense to get the likes of Trippier and Botman and Gomes over the line when they're still essentially a mid-table team who was fighting relegation not too long ago. So look, they are going to get every target, and I think even in the next 6 months, a year, 18 months, there's going to be big players who say, look, it's not the right move. But this is why, it's good having someone like Dan Ashworth who knows how to get deals done. He knows that if, we've missed out on target A, we'll go to target B. So look, there's no panic, and I don't think fans should be panicking either, because I think, by the time the 1st of September rolls around, I think the squad will be looking healthy in all departments.
Interesting you mentioned there Dan Ashworth. Obviously, he's come in, and there was lots of talk about how he would work with Eddie Howe. And Eddie Howe has been speaking about the impact Dan Ashworth has at Newcastle. He said Dan Ashworth has made a real impact, not just looking at recruitment, but in every aspect of the club. And he says it's been a big help on the transfer front. So it's really nice to see that any fears that Newcastle United fans had, maybe even in the boardroom itself, that it wouldn't work, as perfect as we all think it would, or would like to have thought it would. It is working quite well.
Yeah, definitely. And look, Ashworth is a very experienced head. You've only got to listen to sort of his past stories about getting deals done for Lukaku at West Brom. Scouting Nemanja Matic before Man United and Chelsea even picked him up back in the day. He knows what he's doing. He's going to be across all aspects of the club. He's going to be making sure young players are getting the right loan moves out and tracking their development. He's also going to be making sure that Eddie Howe has essentially everything he needs in the first team market. So yeah, no panic. It's good to see that they're building those foundations off the pitch. And I think what has sort of played to against Newcastle is the fact that they got so many defensive deals done before July even rolled around. We had Pope, Target and Botman in towards the end of June. We've now had a month of no incomes, and I think that's why the sentiment on social media and stuff is that Newcastle are struggling in the market. I don't think that's the case. I think there's still 5 weeks left to go. I don't think there should be any sort of cause for panic at the minute.
Now we know they want the right winger. We mentioned there, Diaby's made his intentions very, very clear. Of course, things could change. It is football, and sometimes money does talk. Jack Harrison is another player in that position who's been strongly linked. Leeds don't want to sell another star. How do you see that one going? I mean, if you look at Jack Harrison, I think got 10 goals last season. He was part of that kind of star lineup with the likes of Phillips and Rafinha, who's also left Leeds. Is it time, you think, for him to move on and Newcastle's the next step in his career?
I think personally, a move like that would suit him. He was very highly rated at Manchester City. He went to America and obviously impressed him. He did very well for Leeds. I know some fans are sort of torn as to whether to sign him, but I think he would be a very decent addition. So I think for him, Newcastle would be a good move. He would get regular game time. I think he would suit Eddie Howe's style of play. He's good defensively and going forward. So yeah, for me personally, I think it would be a good move for him. I think the position Leeds are in is, they've got all the cards. They've sold Phillips, they've sold Rafinha, who were their 2 best players. The fans were probably thinking, if we're still Harrison as well, what on earth is going on here? So Leeds, I think, unless the player comes out and says, I really want to go, I think they're in a very strong position to keep him this summer, because at the minute it seems like he isn't at least not publicly pushing for that move. So I think that's why it's sort of been a stumbling block at the minute.
Ian Coughlin there saying he would take Harrison all day long for the right price, and I guess that is the key point there, the right price, because it's not just Harrison. We've mentioned there Diaby, there's Quetta people are talking about in the links, who also can play out on the wing, which a few people have mentioned. But the right price, and we keep referring to this Newcastle United tax. Now, last week and the week before, we praised Newcastle for not giving in to demands, for sticking to their guns, because there is enough time in the transfer market, and they are rolling the dice, hoping that the selling club will fall and say, yes, right, we'll take that cash. But is there a moment where Newcastle maybe have to play over and over? If we get to that Forest game and they line up with Fraser on the right and Callum Wilson and only Chris Wood, do you then look at the next couple of weeks and say, right, yes, you're going to have to pay an extra 10-15 million just to make sure that the squad has been upgraded to what it was at the end of last season?
Yeah, potentially. I think, look, it's going to be a lot of potentially trying to call players and clubs bluff. If on one hand, if we're getting to the end of the window and Newcastle are desperate for attacking options, other clubs are going to look at them and say, yes, it's going to cost you. On the other hand, the likes of Everton and Leicester, who probably need to sell players in the next couple of weeks, if they haven't shifted as many players as they wanted by the end of the window, could they be tempted to maybe sell Calvert-Lewin for a bit cheaper than they're quoting at the minute? Could Leicester be maybe, forced to lower their asking price for Harvey Barnes? It could fall either way. But you've just got to hope that Newcastle do stick their guns and don't overpay, because personally, look, Callum Wilson and Chris Wood, I think maybe it's not enough. Maybe you need a third striker. But I think if you're going into the first couple of games of the season at least with Miggy and Fraser and Murphy, I think that's enough depth. I don't think it's enough till January, but I think, going into the Forest game and the games against City and Liverpool, I don't think we should maybe be rushing until, September's looming. Because I think they do have the bodies. It's just about making sure they get the quality in this summer.
A comment there from Mickey, and he says he doesn't think Newcastle are going to get anybody else in unless they go a bit higher with the bids. It's interesting you mentioned Harvey Barnes. He is a player that was linked over the weekend, as was Draxler, who plays for PSG. And we mentioned a few weeks ago, didn't we, that you're going to get names week in, week out. But I mean, Harvey Barnes, good Premier League pedigree, does a very decent job. But is he an upgrade on Ryan Fraser, Jacob Murphy?
Yeah, I think he is. I think when you look at the purple patch he's had under Brendan Rodgers at Leicester, I think he would be a step above. Now, he's another player who predominantly plays down the left, and we know that that's Maxey's position at the minute, and they're looking for someone on the right, or they're going to have to eventually move Maxey down the left if they can't get their sort of targets this summer potentially. But I think Barnes would be a step up. I think when he's fit and firing, he's among the best players in that Leicester squad alongside Maddison. So I think it would be a good deal. Again, the reports that we're seeing over the weekend that Leicester are quoted 50 million. I think this is the thing. They're great players. They're a step up. But would you be paying 50 million for them? I don't know. So this is why I don't envy Dan Ashworth in the market trying to do these deals. But when push comes to shove, they're going to have to pay it. How wants these attacking players in? You've got to back the manager. So the money will be there. So it's a tricky one.
When before we came on to the broadcast, we were discussing where Newcastle go next after Harrison, after Diaby. Diaby has snubbed Newcastle. Harrison looking unlikely. They want to right when they're in. Where do they go next? And we were struggling to come up with, not just an alternative, but actually names really. I mean, Dwight McNeil is one that always seems to crop up, but he was wanted by Rafa Benitez back in the day, but standards have gone up a level. He hasn't scored in goodness knows how long. Obviously relegated with Burnley. We've got Sarr, we've got Hudson Odoi, Trossard, who obviously is at Brighton and Dan Ashworth signed him, Pepe at Arsenal. But some of these are natural, wingers on the right, some of them are on the left. And again, the selling clubs are going to be asking for a lot of money. And are they again an upgrade on what Newcastle already got?
Yeah, look, I mean, some of those names, I don't think Dwight McNeil is potentially an upgrade. But then you look at the likes of Hudson Odoi, who, I'd be starting Chelsea's hand off if they were going to let him go this summer. Then, as we say, we're discussing the likes of Trossard. Ashworth knows him well from signing him at Brighton, but he's not really a winger, and we know that anyhow at the minute is really playing with a 10. That sort of rules the likes of him and Conor Gallagher out. It's such a tricky market. Everybody's out to strengthen their attack this summer, and there's limited options in the market. Nicolas Pepe came for so much money, hasn't worked for an Arsenal. Is he sort of suited to the Premier League? As I say, I just don't envy Ashworth trying to get the deals done, but I think they will. They've got enough sort of irons in the fire, and I do think they will get one over the line. It's interesting though. If you could pick one name right now, who do you think you'd want him?
So we're going to say realistically. I mean, out of the names I've just mentioned there, I think Sarr would do a pretty good job, and I would actually like to see Gallagher come in. I know he's not a winner, but I think Gallagher showed at Palace that he's a good quality Premier League player. I don't think he's going to get a look in at Chelsea. Obviously, he had that horrendous miss, didn't he? That penalty miss, but we'll not punish him for that. I think for me, realistically, looking at all the elements, I think Sarr and Gallagher would be my choice. But I know a lot of people are in the comments here and they're shouting, Paqueta can play on the wing. You've got the Bruno Guimaraes link, you've got Joelinton, Brazilian. That's the fairy tale everybody's wanting. But again, it comes down to the price tag of how much are Leon really going to want for Paqueta to come to Newcastle. And is that his strongest position? Because it's arguably not either.
Well, I think the question isn't, is it his strongest position? I think the question is, does he actually want to play there? Because we know he can play as a false nine, but Brazil, we know he plays a 10 on the right if needs be. But I mean, I've looked up and he's done at least 3 interviews where he said my best / favourite position is centre midfield. And I don't know whether, he probably knows if he comes to Newcastle, he's not a shoo-in to actually start there because of how strong it is. And he probably doesn't want to be forced out. So that's maybe why that's not happening. But it would be a good addition, I think, Paqueta. And I don't think Leon are going to charge as much as they were in January. Hudson-Odoi for me would be the one. I would love to see Hudson-Odoi in. Again, you'd have to do some pretty heavy persuading.
Do you think that could be a moment for Newcastle to really take advantage of the loan market potential? We know Chelsea had this kind of weird approach of signing loads of youngsters and then not necessarily wanting to let them leave permanently, let them go out on loan here. Then what Gallagher was going second or third loan spell, West Brom, Palace. Hudson-Odoi could be another one where Newcastle go and say, well, look, we'll take him for a season and we'll see where we are in 12 months' time.
Definitely. And I mean, you forget because of how long he's actually been around, but he's only 21. He's played very limited football over the last 12 months because of, sort of freak injuries. Chelsea seem to be trying to sign pretty much every player under the sun. They brought Raheem Sterling, they really wanted Rafinha. You forget that they've also got Werner, Pulisic, Ziyech, who are all playing down the flanks. Hudson-Odoi is probably going to be looking and saying, am I even going to get a look in this season? So that may be one, next month. I would love to see them try to get over the line. And I think a loan deal would probably suit Chelsea. But, look, we, as someone's mentioned in the comments there, there's a different sort of flurry of names every couple of days. We could be sitting here in a month's time and we've signed someone that they haven't even been linked with. So there's a long way to go, and I do think patience is required.
You mentioned that Chelsea's recent activity in the transfer market with who they've signed. They have been linked to Ant and Maximin over the weekend. Again, Maxi is a man who just splits opinion, doesn't he? And we were talking about this before we came on air about where we would stand if a decent bid came in. I mean, first off, what is a decent bid? Are we talking 50, 60 million pounds for Maximin, you think?
I think 50 million. I think if you sell him for any less than 50 million, given his age, what he brings to this team, look, yes, Newcastle are going to strengthen the summer, but he was the main man last season. He played over 30 games. You've got to think Wilson was only playing 18 last season. I think anything less than 50 million, I don't think I'll be accepting it. If I'm honest, I think, you just said he splits opinion. I think, I'm not sure I agree with you. I don't think we should sell him this summer.
Well, just to the listeners, I haven't actually said that.
So
in fact, we were talking about outside, and I said, it's because it's such a big season for Ant Maximin. I think he really has to step up a level, and I just wonder if he's got enough to do so. He's a very talented player, but the lack of consistency is just so frustrating and so annoying. If he sorts that out, then he will be unstoppable, and you can see. On his day when he does it, this is exactly why the likes of Chelsea are being linked. But Chelsea are in a position where they can afford that luxury. They can afford Ant Maximin to perform every 4, 5, 6 games, and the rest of it he has an average time.
Yeah.
Newcastle are on a transition. They're in a building stage where they can't afford to have a luxury who just rocks up every 5 or 6 games. They need someone who's churning out week in, week out, and they maybe have a bad game here or there. And 50, 60 million, that's a lot of money to go and invest elsewhere, to go and build. And, I think if we were talking about this in January and he hasn't stepped up a level between now and January, I think it's a total different situation. And there'll be a lot of people in the comments here saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. It is just my opinion. But I do think we'll be having this conversation in 6 months' time. The comments, the opinion on whether you would sell him if he's just had a sub-average season yet again, would be the answer would be a lot different to what maybe it is now. I think a lot of people they're willing them on and they want them to hit the highs, and so do I.
Yeah.
But do I believe he can do? I'm not 100%.
It's a huge season for him because he's got all the hallmarks of a great player, but his end product hasn't been good enough. His decision making hasn't been good enough. For me at the minute, look, it's a massive season. He needs to improve his end product. He needs to sort of lift his game to the next level. But we just spent 15 minutes talking about how hard it is to bring attacking midfielders in, and then we're talking about potentially selling our best one. I don't think it's a luxury that Newcastle have at the minute to be able to flog him. When the other only options at the minute are Fraser and Miggy. They haven't even got a right midfielder in. So
for what it's worth, I don't think Newcastle will sell on to maximum. I just think it just emphasises how big of a the next 6 months are. And Tom in the comments there said a lot more fans are into Aaron Maxim than not, and I totally agree with that. Like I said, on his day, superb. I'll be one of those stand up and cheering him when he takes on a defender. Football's an ethical game. I just really do hope that he can just reach the levels we all know he's got, because like I say, I think it comes down to what Newcastle can afford in terms of effort and product, having that luxury.
I think he's destined for a big season because look, he hasn't performed badly by any stretch of the imagination. He's been Newcastle's go-to man under previous managers. He's had a brilliant pre-season off the pitch. We've seen those videos where he's been sprinting in the mountains. You can tell he's put a lot of focus on his fitness. He's had a full season with Eddie Howe, who we think is going to be able to get the best out of him. You just got to hit the ground running this season. But I do agree, we could be sat here in 6 months' time when the January market window rolls around saying, is it time to cash in and move on to someone better?
You describe him there as Newcastle's go-to player, and maybe that's where a lot of criticism comes from, because he is up there. He is arguably Newcastle's second or third best player. I think Gomes probably hits him to it. But I think the fact that he is up there, and when he doesn't perform as well as everyone wants him to, then the criticism is a lot harder. I think when you look at how Bruno is performing, he's knocked St. Maximum off the pitch, so to speak. Again, the criticism maybe ranks up because everyone's expecting so much of St. Maximum, but we just don't see him doing it enough.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there twice. I think Maxi goes missing, and it's noticeable because he's obviously the man that they're trying to get the ball to when they're going forward. And then when he has those games, where he has every 2 or 3 where he doesn't perform, you notice it more. Bruno coming in has also shone a spotlight on the fact that Bruno hasn't really missed a beat. Every game he performs to a similar level. He doesn't really go hiding, and it just sort of shows that Maxi actually does do that. So, as we've said, fans know he's got to raise his game. But I'm going to back him to do that this season. I've got high hopes.
Fingers crossed, you're right. It's like I say, in full flow, there was a few things better in a black and white shirt than Aaron Maxim running at defenders and just terrifying the life out of them.
Yeah.
And I do hope that we're not having a conversation about being sold or potentially being sold because a big bid's coming.
I agree with Vicky. Yeah, best season yet, definitely.
Fingers crossed, Vicky. Yeah, she says Max will have his best season yet. I do hope everyone who's backed him in the comments there is right, and my comments are proven to be wrong. People also mentioned there Miguel Almiron's had a decent pre-season. We've got an episode of our little mini-series Let's Talk About. The last episode was on Miguel Almiron, me and John Gibson having a bit of debate about Miggy's future. Fair to say that one was definitely split. As you may know if you're a regular listener of the podcast, John Gibson is not a fan of Almiron. I'm a little bit more of a fan of him. Really interesting debate. I'll pop that podcast in the comments. Do listen to it if you haven't so far. It's gone down really well. A lot of people sharing their views on Miggy. Talking about pre-season, Aaron, Newcastle over in Portugal. Our chief sports writer Lee Ryder is over there, and we have a video from Lee which we'll play you in just a moment. Of course, they played Burnley in a behind closed doors game over the weekend. They're going to play Benfica. We'll listen to Lee first, and then we'll dive into the final week away of pre-season.
So Newcastle United's pre-season tour, or mini tour of Europe, if you like, continues here in Lisbon, where they'll face Benfica tomorrow night at the Estadio de Luz, a venue that a lot of Newcastle fans will remember from 2013 when they were beaten in the Europa League, the quarter-final stage. A lot's changed since then. Newcastle have now got new owners, completely new management team. We've been around the block a little bit in that sense from the Alan Pardew sort of days, but Newcastle really got the teeth into that sort of pre-season training game against Burnley, and now they're looking to build on that with a tough game against Benfica. This will be a real test for Newcastle. Benfica were very good in the Champions League last season. It took Liverpool to beat them, and this will be a game where Eddie Howe will be looking at his players and saying, we're edging close to that Premier League opener now against Nottingham Forest, and you're looking for big performances. So we'll probably see a lot of players get 90 minutes, but overall for Newcastle, pre-season has gone well. Could have been worse. They got this sort of late tour to Austria after the American trip got cancelled. So ultimately, Freddie Howe, he's got the work from the players, and so far there's no major injuries, so things are going quite well here. A lot of fans will be arriving in Lisbon in the next 24 hours, and they'll be looking for a big European night, a little taste of it. It's not often you get such a high-profile friendly against a team like Benfica, but Newcastle coming here, big chance to step up those preparations, and for Eddie Howe, he's starting to whittle down that 11 for that Nottingham Forest game. So let's see exactly where Newcastle stand after that huge game against Benfica.
So we have it, Lee Ryder over in Portugal, and he'll be bringing you coverage of that friendly game on Tuesday. I think you can tell he's stopping near the airport there. It's going to be an interesting week, and I just want to go back first of all to Austria actually, because Newcastle obviously they played men's 05, and it was noticeable the lack of firepower. Eddie Howe mentioned it. They've since sold Dwight Gale's left on a free to go to Stoke, and we're talking there about the market and the frustrations, and I think it's going to be another good test of what they've got against a good side in Benfica. Just how well or how important it is to get in another striker and another creative, whether it be a winger, centre midfielder, to unlock the defences. And you're going up, as Lee said there, against a very strong European side. It's going to be a big test, and we're going to learn more essentially, aren't we, about what they've got up front.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously you can't read too much into these pre-season friendlies, but it was, as you say, noticeable in the last friendly, sort of how short they are in attack. In terms of firepower, yeah, Chris Wood again, it just doesn't seem to be clicking. Miggy has done well in pre-season, but you ask him to do that in the Premier League, where at times he sort of struggles. So yeah, I think we'll know more. I agree with what Lee said in that video. I think we'll see a lot of players getting a full 90 this time to try and sort of bring them up to speed ahead of the Forest game. But yeah, it's an important week, but it's good to see that they've put some youngsters along with them, the likes of Alex Murphy and players like that. So yeah, interesting to see who Howe goes with, but hopefully a decent performance against what's some good experienced opposition.
Against Burnley, they played 2 games, didn't they? 2 11-side games, and Matt Bonswell's another youngster. He was on the trip. He played. Nunes got run out. He replaced Almiron. Alex Murphy and Jayton and Cook are there. They didn't get run out against Burnley. They scored 11 goals between the two sides that played. Willick got 2. Anderson got 1. Wilson, some match from Matt Ritchie, Jacob Murphy, Almiron got 2 and an assist. A lot of people talking about Elliot Anderson. We've covered him, time and time again on the pod. And each week we're saying he doesn't look outplayed. He's impressed. He's made it clear he wants to be part of his first team squad. We know he's got interest in the Championship and League One. But again, and I appreciate it's a behind closed doors game against Burnley. It wouldn't have been anywhere near 100%, competitiveness. But again, the goal, by all accounts, he impressed. It's going to be really interesting to see him up against Benfica, and the 2 friendlies coming into James Park in a few days' time. I think he's done enough to really push himself into that first team picture.
I'm starting to think maybe it's not the worst idea keeping him, because if he can keep, again, look, it's pre-season. He didn't look out of place in Austria. Obviously, he played very well in those 2 training sessions on Saturday. If he can sort of have a, decent showing against Benfica, put in, a good performance on Friday or Saturday, they've got a long time left in this window to decide what to do with them. It might even be worth just keeping them and giving them a couple of minutes against Forest. And then, sort of later on in the window before signing right. Because look, we're probably in double figures now. We've got clubs that want to sign him. A lot of championship teams are after him, plus teams in the SPL. I think we need to take the time on it, be patient and see if he can keep this form up. I don't think it's a bad option having on the squad.
Not at all, because with the youngsters who have gone on this trip to Portugal, like we mentioned, Murphy, Bondswell, Munez and Turner Cook, you get the feel that's more just to give them a bit of experience. But with Anderson, it's very much, I think, can he really break into this first team squad and upset the established order, so to speak? Can he make enough impact over the pre-season where he is in with a real shout of start against Forest?
Yeah, it goes back to what we've said as well about, is he going to stagnate if he stays? I feel like if he's going to be kept on beyond the summer, he needs to be getting game time. He needs minutes in, and I think, it's no good just keeping him and sitting on the bench. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but he's looked very, very. He hasn't looked out of place at all on these pre-season trips. So yeah, look, long may it continue. It's a different ball game going into the Premier League when you're playing against the best teams in the country. But look, he's certainly sort of thrown his name into contention with his performances in recent weeks.
I mean, I think that's a really good comment there on Elliot Anderson, where I can't see who it is because the hide the current comment is hiding the point there, but this person is saying it's the case of how much game time he'll get. This is from Craig. It's a case of how much game time he'll get. Basically, needs to go out and know that he's not going to play week in, week out, because of course that is the important bit, isn't it? The development of the youngsters. You don't want them sitting on the bench, but I do think he's going to be within a shout of getting into this first team squad and potentially first 11. Adam Hall asking, is he better than Mickey and Murphy now? Different type of player.
I think it's too soon to say, isn't it? Because he's done it in League Two, he's doing it in pre-season friendlies, but he could play against Nottingham Forest and just look completely out of his depth. I think it's too close to be too soon. To be sort of saying whether he's better than Miggy, who's probably racked up about 100 Premier League appearances. So it's a tricky one. But look, the potential's there. If he can keep this up, he looks like he looks like a real prospect for the future.
Definitely. We were talking about there the lack of firepower that Newcastle have and what these games have told us so far. And Andrew Palmer there asks how much time is a £14 million striker going to get, and that is the other important element when it comes to finding a new forward. Dwight Gale leaving has definitely increased the need to get somebody in. Even if he'd stopped, I would have argued that still you've got to get somebody. But we mentioned this on last week's episode. It's similar to the chase for a right winger as well. You struggle to pick names who are realistic, and then you struggle names who are realistic aren't necessarily going to be a realistic asking price, and then you have to sell it. Because if Callum Wilson's fit, he starts, I think, unless you've gone out and you've got someone in the class of a Harry Kane or a Lukaku, who are you going to get in that's better than Callum Wilson?
It's tricky, isn't it? There's not too many names that stand out. Even when you're thinking about the likes of Calvert-Lewin, there's still people that say, well, I'd have a fully fit Wilson over him. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I wrote about it over the weekend. They knew Gale was going, and it's obviously been in the works for a while. But the simple matter of fact is they're down to two strikers now, and we all know Wilson's track record with injuries that could soon be one striker. So, look, Eddie Howe knows this, Dan Ashworth knows it, we know it, fans know it. It's imperative the next month to get someone in. It's just to see what route they go down. Do they sign a brilliant right winger? Push the boat out, get in, spend, and then bring in just another body in attack and just say we're going to focus on Wilson, or do it the other way around. Big money striker, a big name who's going to walk straight in that first 11, but then they sort of maybe bring a loan in on the wing. It's interesting to see what they're going to do, because it doesn't look like there's the budget to sort of go out and spend 40 million on both positions. So it's interesting to see, but obviously we'll know more in a couple of weeks' time.
Certainly. Well, the transfer market it's been really interesting to report on, to follow. It's refreshing to see Newcastle actually, doing what's been necessary. And we're not going to sit here and say, well, at least they haven't tried, because they have tried. Unfortunately, things have just been a little more difficult than I think some people maybe expected. But like we mentioned at the start, it's good to see them not having that scattergun approach and sticking to their guns. So a couple more questions, and we have one from Nicola on Twitter. She asks about the women's team. She says, we know investment in recruitment has been going on, but she's wondering, do you think there's going to be any more from the club in terms of pushing the profile of the women's side?
Yeah, I would imagine so. I think, it's probably not beyond the possibility that they'll play another 1 or 2 games at St James's Park, given obviously the immense success of that last season. We know that Becky Langley's probably going to be strengthened with better players. They'll also probably keep hold of the ones like Katie Barker, who's obviously playing so well. Yeah, I think the club have made it clear from day one they want to give it as much airtime as possible. They want to treat it like they treat the men's team. So, I think in the next couple of months we'll see that sort of publicity ramped up.
And I think it's interesting that Man Stokes has been so public, as has my dad could see about their backing for the women's side. And with the demand at St James's Park, people are really struggling to get tickets, and struggling to get tickets for this weekend's pre-season games. I'm hoping that we see a real boost in attendances for the women's side. Families, youngsters who they can't get to St James's Park on Saturday because there's not enough tickets. And they go, okay, we'll head down the road and we'll go and support the other team, because you know what, the women deserve it. And it was really nice to see St James's Park as well as it was for that game against Alnwick. And I'm hoping that a lot of people who were there that day will look and look to follow the women a lot closer this season.
Yeah, I think next time we play at St James's, I think we'll be talking about an even bigger attendance, because everybody that was there is going to go again, and everyone else will want to be a part of it. As you say, the demand for the first team tickets is so great at the minute. I think we will see the women's team get more, sort of spectators there, and I also think the calibre of young players they're signing, more people are going to go along to those Monday night under 23 games, to be honest. So. Yeah, look, very positive, on all aspects of the club. Good to see that it's not just the first team getting the TLC it needs, and really positive. But I think we'll see a lot more of the women's team this year.
And then obviously Newcastle back at St James's Park, as we mentioned there. Game on Friday and a game on Saturday. Nicola also asked whether the 2 games will be televised. My understanding is that neither will be, due to kind of rights issues and what have you, rules with UEFA. Do you understand that the Friday game should be on BBC Radio Newcastle? Not too sure about the Saturday game, because I think obviously the EFL, the League One Championships all kick it off then. So, but that's unfortunate, but they're the rules, and it just goes to really reignite that argument: do Newcastle expand or relocate? And that's one that's going to go on for many months, if not years. The demand, though, for pre-season friendly tickets and all, it's mind blowing.
I mean, Mike Ashley, if he was a sane businessman, should be sitting looking at this thinking, what on earth have I done in the last 14 years? Because 20,000 in a queue at 10 o'clock in the morning to get a pre-season ticket. What a waste of years and money.
People were actually cheering outside the box office when I went up. They got their tickets. They were coming out and they were cheering because they got tickets to go and see Newcastle play on Bilbao.
It's just unbelievable. Imagine when they win something. I know it's the old cliche, but imagine when they get anywhere near success. I mean, yeah, look, brilliant to see so many people go to the pre-season friendlies. I'm looking forward to being back at St James's Friday and Saturday. I'm looking forward to seeing what war flags have got in store as well. It's going to be brilliant. I'm really, really excited for the season.
Yeah, it's going to be brilliant, and we'll be bringing you live coverage of the game against Benfica and the 2 games on Friday and then Saturday. Interesting though, obviously they've been linked to Pakistani players for Atlanta, who's be the Friday game, isn't it? Is that a kind of a chance for him to show maybe Newcastle's hierarchy what he can do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what better opportunity to sort of earn yourself a move than playing in front of the scouts at their home stadium. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting for the scouts and for fans to sort of see what type of players a Patter is, if he obviously plays any part of that game on the weekend. But yeah, there'll be a couple of players where they've probably got an eye on them, thinking, these calibre of opponents, Benfica, Atletico Bilbao and Atlanta, have never been seen in pre-season friendlies against Newcastle, so you never know, there could always be a sort of stand-up there where they think, I maybe missed that one, rather than, going to play York and Dalton as they were last summer and sort of just going through the motions. So yeah, exciting to see Zapata. Obviously he's one of many players linked with the club. So yeah, good chance for him to sort of show what he can do.
Craig Lax made another good comment. He says you can't honestly see Newcastle spending 40 million on a striker this window. He reckons it'll be an understudy to Wilson or free like Velotti. And I'm sure he doesn't mean not free like Velotti, because if it was Velotti, as you mentioned not so long ago, it's not hand up for a striker of that quality.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, obviously, it was only a matter of time that Newcastle got linked with him. Obviously, he left Torino on free. As I said on the pod last week, it would be a fantastic addition. It would tick a lot of boxes. And obviously, we saw a report at the end of last week that it's sort of agents offering the likes of Newcastle, West Ham, Everton. So yeah, that's definitely one to keep an eye on in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, look, it goes back to what I say. Are they going to maybe say we don't need to go and spend 40 million because we know we've got Wilson? Should we sort of put that in the right midfield area? Or do they say, look, we need firepower, let's go all out? It just sort of depends what the high up you're thinking in terms of where they want to sort of prioritise in the next couple of weeks.
So it all does come down to money. And just to finish off there, you've alluded to Everton maybe needing to have to sell another player here or there, Leicester as well. There's lots of reports about FFP with those. And both clubs are maybe an example to Newcastle and their hierarchy about, if we go and spend big, then we have to get it right. And I'm sure they're well aware of that, but it's even more, in the public eye when you do look at two clubs like Leicester and like Everton, where they can't go and strengthen as much as they want because they are, tied by financial fair play rules.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Staveley and anyone else, how anybody from Newcastle, they've all stuck to the same message, and that is it's to rebuild a job that's going to be spread across a couple of transfer windows. It's very easy to forget that they spent nearly 100 million January and they've already spent 60 million this summer, although it doesn't really feel like that. So they do need to sort of spend it wisely and not just go gung ho in the market and spend it because it's there. They need to do it measured so that they don't fall into the trap of a sort of Everton or a Leicester or a Villa even down the line. So patience. We keep saying it, but patience. I've got so much trust in these owners and this manager that they're going to get it right. I'm not even panicking about these links. I think come this time next month we'll be in such a healthier position. And yeah, I just hope that fans are sort of in the same mindset as well.
Tom there from Australia predicting Newcastle to finish 8th. And that's without a right winger or a new striker.
Yeah, I personally think they're going to fall a little bit short of Europe this season, which I think is absolutely fine. It's a rebuilding job. I think anywhere from 8th to 11th is, or 8th to 10th is progress. But that's only possible if they bring in maybe one or two real bits of quality in the next month.
Plenty of time to do so, and we'll bring you all the updates over on chroniclelive.co.uk, where we've got our daily transfer live blog. Aaron, usually the man at the helm there, so you can get all the gossip, all the concrete links in there as well. We've got plenty of great content on the podcast channel. There's an interview with broadcaster John Champion up on there where he reminisces about Sir Bobby Robson, Kevin Keegan, that famous night in Rotterdam when Newcastle beat final 3-2 in the Champions League, and Sir Bobby's jig of delight on the touchline against Leeds. And there's plenty of chat there about Eddie Howe and the takeover. In his words, how the takeover has resuscitated Newcastle. It's a really interesting chat, if I do say so myself, so head over to listen to that. I mentioned the Let's Talk About series. We've covered Miggy, Eddie Howe, Joe Linton, Jamal Lascelles and St James's Park. And next week we'll be covering, or this week rather, we'll be covering the centre midfield dilemma, which I'm sure you and I will talk about close to that Forest game, because obviously linked to plenty of other centre midfielders, but it's already oversubscribed, so I'll get your view nearer to the Forest game on that. But plenty of good content all around podcast website, so do head over and check us out on both platforms, please. And please remember to like and follow the podcast. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your week.